what sticks out in my mind was the amount of smoke, gun smoke that was inside the hallway. And I told the guys, hey, be careful, we're in the kill zone. Because I knew he had shot through the walls.
Careful, guys, shot fire.
I'm just waiting for those rounds to hit me. Right when we got to where we thought he was at, then gunfire. The way he was shooting.
Take cover, guys.
He's probably going to take all of us out.
Quickly approaching 2 years since the massacre at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde that claimed the lives of 19 innocent children and 2 innocent teachers. It's still heartbreaking and difficult to think about the sheer cruelty that was inflicted on the community, not only by the shooter, but by law enforcement agencies that betrayed the trust of the community.
You know what kind of gun?
No, man, they are. He has a battle rifle, like, does he really?
What's the safest way to do this? I'm not trying to get clapped out.
Me neither.
You knew that it was definitely a AR 223 round. You could see the shell casings. We had no choice but just to wait and try to get something that had better coverage where we could actually stand up to him.
The Texas Tribune did an amazing job at compiling this footage to show the fundamental failures of the police response and how our country's police culture contributed to the horrors. These officers are more concerned with self-preservation instead of doing their jobs and stopping the shooter, an attitude that is echoed in police training where officer safety always takes precedent over the lives of victims and suspects.
I called for long rifles, I know that. I don't know what words I used, but I knew we needed to get a whole bunch of those over there because I didn't have one. And I don't recall if Lieutenant Martinez even had one when we walked up.
Stop my truck, take out my AR, get it ready. I know there's schools going on. We don't have to be shooting. I need my AR.
According to the Texas Tribune, the officers we see here were armed with practically the same weapon that the shooter was using. And given all of the tax dollars, time, and extensive training our country's police officers supposedly need to properly do their jobs, there's no excuse for their lack of action.
Had anybody gone through that door?
Yes, sir.
He would have killed whoever it was.
Yes, sir.
I mean, we can only carry so many ballistic vests on you. That 223 round would have gone right through you and through the door.
I want to get the door open. What am I going to do? It might as well be paper.
I called for a shield, but our shields are, I don't think they're AR rated. They're more handgun rated. They're lightweight. I mean, without maybe a ballistic, I feel like we're in that fatal funnel. You know, over there we're going to get killed, you know.
Bortax showed up and they had this humongous shield. I mean, it was a thick shield. Once they went in, we heard a lot more gunfire. Then all I heard was they said that the shooter was down.
We're going to get scrutinized. I'm expecting that. We're going to get scrutinized why we didn't go in there. I know what the firepower he had based on what shells I saw, the holes in the wall in the room next to his. And I know this is horrible, and I know this is what our training tells us to do, but we haven't contained. There's probably going to be some deceased in there, but we don't need any more from out here.
Disgraced former police chief Pete Arredondo himself admitted that training dictates for officers to be protected at all costs, even if that means not saving as many children as possible.
Why do these people who sit in power sit there and do absolutely nothing while our children are slaughtered?
Brett Cross's 10-year-old son, Uzziah Garcia, was killed that day.
But I'm not a political person. All I want is justice and accountability for my son, his classmates, and the teachers. That's all I want. And I don't want any other child to go through what my son did. I don't want any other parent to have a funeral for their child.
This is truly what it's all about, justice and dignity for the victims.
The law enforcement response at Robb Elementary School on May 24, 2022, and in the hours and days after, was a failure that should not have happened. The department's review concluded that a series of major failures in leadership, in tactics, in communications, in training, and in preparedness were made by law enforcement leaders and others responding to the mass shooting at Robb Elementary.
The DOJ has finally concluded its investigation of law enforcement's response to the shooting, and surprisingly enough, they did not hold back on the deadly incompetence of the response.
As a consequence of failed leadership, training, and policies, injured and scared students and teachers remain trapped with the subject in the classrooms, waiting to be rescued. Survivors later shared that they heard officers gathered outside the classrooms while they waited. Law enforcement officers from different agencies who had self-deployed to the scene in overwhelming numbers were themselves waiting for leadership decisions about how to proceed. Many officers reported that they did not know who, if anyone, was in charge, what they should do, or the status of the incident. 77 minutes after the first officers arrived on the scene, and after 45 rounds had been fired by the active shooter, the shooter was killed.
96 officers of Greg Abbott's Operation Lone Star were on the scene, as they show up to all scenes in rural Texas. And not one of those officers, including his high-level command officers, took control of that scene. Not one of them said, we need to do something to stop this madness. We need to coordinate a command center. That never happened. Not before, during, or after this event. The same refrain from cops over and over and over. He's got an AR-15 in there. There's an AR-15. He's got an assault rifle. Not one cop, not one DPS trooper, not one sheriff. Over and over and over, you would hear that one simple refrain, culminating in one of the last officers to suggest that. He said, I don't want to die today. Specifically, he said, I don't want to get clapped out today. The children certainly were more brave than the police. One officer yelled into that room, if there's anybody in there, let us know. The child cried out, said, I'm in here. The gunman went back into that room. 4 shots were fired, and that child was killed.
Amy Goodman and Democracy Now! Have done brilliant work covering the story, and we highly suggest watching more of their reporting from months past.
These politicians are cowards on this issue. They're cowards because they haven't looked at what they need to see, the videos and the footage that I've seen, and the footage all over this country, because this story repeats itself week after week after week.
Ted Cruz challenger Roland Gutierrez sums it up perfectly.
A student from inside the classroom called 911 asking for help, and officers still waited nearly 40 minutes before stopping the shooter. Only a handful of officers at the scene have lost their job or resigned.
Because the DOJ stamp is on there, maybe y'all will start taking us seriously now, instead of telling us to move on, telling us to sweep it under the rug, and not doing a damn thing about it.
Jasmine Cáceres, whose 9-year-old sister Jacqueline was killed, fears there will be no accountability from the Uvalde County District Attorney.
She's been doing her investigation just as long as the DOJ has. The DOJ has no jurisdiction over this. They can't prosecute. She can. What else does she need to be able to move forward?
I hope that the failures end today and that local officials do what wasn't done that day, do right by the victims and survivors of Robb Elementary, terminations, criminal prosecutions, and our state and federal government enact sensible gun laws, because Robb Elementary began the day an 18-year-old wasn't allowed to purchase an AR-15.
She's 100% right. There were so many systemic failures that combined for this atrocity to happen, and there needs to be real accountability for the families of the victims, whether that be through criminal charges in the legal system or through federal and state legislation that would prevent the next shooting from occurring. We will link the full 600-page report down below, as well as the Texas Tribune's assessment of the findings.